Okay, so this is a video on setting the trigger points on this distributor. This is a 1973 Mercedes 450 SL with the D-Jetronic engine. I have got to this for a number of reasons, really, and I've been trying to diagnose a poor running idle condition. Typically every time I took it out, if I put it into gear, it felt very almost like it was bogging, like it was constantly surging at idle. Yeah, it just wasn't running well at all. Very rich. So I've been trying to diagnose that issue. I was looking at the map sensor, I've looked at the different temperature sensors, I've looked at the fuel pressure, and the next thing I looked at essentially was the fuel injectors. Now, what I found when I looked at the fuel injectors, well, they still need replacing and servicing. What I listened to them, and I've got a great tip for you on that, but I listened to them and found that injectors, these interior injectors, so I think it's 2, 3, 6 and 7, were not firing correctly, and because of that, because of the sequence of them, it led me to think that perhaps there was something wrong with the trigger points. Now, I'm doing this video for a number of reasons. One, there's plenty of information out there on pulling the distributor and looking at that, and there's some great resources on the trigger points specifically and what all the parts do, but I couldn't find a video that took you through the steps on how to adjust the dwell time, which is the main kind of the main cause of what the trigger points are doing. So this video is to help all of you, because I've received a lot of help and guidance on the forums and wanted just to have some kind of video that could help perhaps some of you. Now, I want to clarify that I'm not a mechanic in any way. I am just someone that's got a willingness to learn and try. There definitely are more thorough, detailed, accurate ways of doing this, but this is what worked for me, and I've tested this out and it's solved my issue, so I hope that it can help some of you too. Okay, so just on the fuel injectors, the little tip that I got from online was to use a screwdriver, almost like a stethoscope. So what you can do is you can put the screwdriver onto the metal part of the injector, and then listen to the end of it when the engine's running, and you can hear the injector clicking. And what you're looking for is like a consistent rhythmic clicking. And when I kind of started checking these, what I found is that whilst 1, 4, 5 and 8 were firing, 2, 3, 5 and 6 were not firing at all. They were very irregular. There was almost very intermittently, and now that could be for a number of reasons. It could be for bad injectors, it could be bad seals, but because of the pattern of them, that led me to the trigger points. Now, because the trigger points fire in sets of 2s, and I'll link a bunch of different resources which takes you through how they work. But yeah, that's what kind of like led me to that specifically. Yeah, so let me just show you this technique now. I'm going to try and start the car up. Okay, so I'm showing you this after I have fixed the trigger points. So this was not running like this at all, but just so you can see how the fuel injectors should sound. Let's see if this works. So that's how a fuel injector should sound. Okay, so to remove the distributor unit, it's pretty simple. All you really have to do is unclip the top here. You can pull this rotor off relatively easy, but just be sure to mark whereabouts it's pointing. I also take a picture just for visual reference as well. And then there's a small screw just here, which, let me see if I can, there you go. That you just need to be sure that you mark where that screw is, because that'll affect your timing. So yeah, just be sure to mark that screw specifically. And then you can just unplug this vacuum line here. And yeah, we'll take the rest off now. So you just can pull that off. That should come off as well. And then once you're here, you can just take off this little spade connector here. And then I actually go to this screw down here next to pull the whole unit, because it's easier to get to this screw for this little thing here once the whole unit's out. Okay, so I've just loosened that screw. I've been keeping this held in until I pull the unit out, just because I've had a few instances where I've tried to pull it out and lost the screw, and it is not a fun job, let me tell you that. Try and find that screw once it goes down beneath. But essentially now you can just pull that whole unit out and it'll just slide right out. But there are plenty of videos online about showing how to remove the distributor, so I won't spend too much time on this specifically. Okay, so to remove the trigger points once you've got the distributor out, all you need to do is take this, unscrew this, and you can unscrew this one as well. And then this unit will just essentially slide out of here. So to remove this unit, this spring and the trigger block specifically, all you need to do is take off this metal clip here. Just find, if you apply a bit of pressure here, push with a big flathead screwdriver, you can kind of just lever that off, but just make sure you've got your finger on the other side, because otherwise that thing just goes flying. And then all you have to do is then take off the washer, this little washer here, and then you can slide this whole unit up, and similarly here you can slide this out, and that will allow you to remove this whole unit here. So I'm actually in the process of just replacing this block here, because you can see it's completely disintegrated. So yeah, I managed to find a replacement online, which I'm just going to replace this fibre block here, which is a lot cheaper than replacing all the parts. Yeah, so I'm just going to replace this piece now. So to drill these trigger blocks out, it's a relatively simple process. As you can see, I've got the replacement part here, and this is the used one. You can see there's quite a bit of wear on this this end, which engages with the cam, I believe. So all you have to do is we desoldered this point from where it was housed, just here, and then essentially we just drilled out the point here. So if I show you on here, we just drilled out from here, and then we're able to remove the block and the kind of metal components here as well. So a relatively simple process to remove that, and then we're going to reassemble now. Okay, so I've just finished replacing the trigger block itself, which you can see the new one here and the older ones here. You'll notice that there's quite a difference on this point here, where these ones have worn down, and essentially what you're doing is you're adjusting this metal block to compensate for this where it's worn down. So we'll obviously have to readjust this now to ensure that this is correct, but yeah, we'll move on to that stage now. Just one thing to note about these trigger rubbing blocks here is that they're pretty hard to come by. I managed to find someone on one of the forum that luckily had some leftovers, but other than that I couldn't find any online. So if anyone is interested in replacing these, please drop me an email. I'll leave my email in the description, and based on kind of demand, we'll see if we can get some produced or not. But yeah, if it's something you're looking for, just let me know. We'll try and figure it out. Okay, so the fundamentals of what we will be doing essentially is the cam essentially pushes these points here, and there's 4 of those, 2 at the top and then there's 2 at the bottom here, as you can see. And the cam pushes these from side to side. Now what essentially we're doing is we're adjusting this plate here to compensate for the wear here, and that's essentially what's defining our dwell time. Now what I found is that if you move the metal inwards, then essentially we're reducing the dwell time. If we move it outwards, then we're increasing the dwell time. So it's a constant just back and forward of trying to get this to adjust this to get the correct dwell time. Now the ones at the top are relatively easy to access. You can quite easily just slide these little connectors out here, take the washer and these little metal clips off, and then this whole unit slides out, so then you can get an easy leverage on these parts. The ones at the bottom are a little bit more difficult because they have this metal bracket that's blocking it, so I just had to get some wire, leaving those pliers in there, sorry, and just kind of adjust it. It's pretty difficult. You can see where I've been a little aggressive with it. I should have taken more care there, but you can get to it to adjust. Now it's relatively easy to define which which point you're working on, so you can see which wire this leads to the second one, this second point here. So that is number 22. So we know that when we're checking the dwell time of number 22, it leads to this point, and this will be the point that we need to adjust because of that. Now I've adjusted all the other points just because this is a new point. I do need to reset that, so we're going to get into that now. Just one thing to note is that when you're, as you can see here, this one's been, I've bent this one already, but you have to be really careful not to contact or to touch these metal contacts on the here and here. And what I do, just as good practice, is that every time I have adjusted something, I will give it a good spray with some contact cleaner just to make sure it's nice and clean when it goes back in. So we're just going to put the trigger points back into the distributor now. You just have to be careful that it lines up with, there's a groove on the inside of that cam there that this has to align with, so just make sure that that's placed correctly. You can usually feel once it's in. Let's try. Once it's there, we go. Now it's located, and then we just screw everything back in, and then we'll start testing these points. Okay, so the fundamentals of how this setup works is essentially we have this protractor, and I've marked on it an angle of 120, which you can see this kind of highlighted area here. We have a piece of wire that tapes to the distributor rotor, and that essentially we're going to spin this and measure the angle. And I'll show you how to do that in a second. And then I've just got 2 spade connectors here, so that I can connect my ohm meter to that, and then we'll be able to note where the opening and closing of those trigger points is. So I'll show you how that looks in practice now. But I have got these connected to 22. which is the trigger point that I highlighted earlier, which was the one we're testing, and to, I think that is 12, yeah, which is ground. Okay, so the premise of this is pretty simple. We have a protractor with our angle on there of 120 degrees, and what we're going to try and do is rotate this slowly and listen out, or look on the meter from when we go from infinity to 0. We'll then line up the start of the 120 degree angle, and then we want to listen for when we go back from 0 to infinity. And we'll mark that on here, count the distance, and then work out accordingly what we need to do based on that. So let's give that a go. So we put our okay. Get that held in place, and then we'll start turning slowly. Okay, so that is where we go from infinity to 0. So what we're going to do is just line up with the start of the pink angle here, so we know that there is where it starts, and keep turning. Okay, and there is where we lose it, so it's roughly about here on the protractor. Okay, so now if we count that, so we know that's 120, 130, 140, 150, 160, 170, 180, 190. So we know we're quite far out anyway. Visually we can see that the angle that we're aiming for, the 120 degrees, is way off. But essentially now we have to adjust those metal points to try and get it down towards that 120, 130 range. Now, from what I've read online, anywhere between 140 onwards, so 140, 150, 160, can start to cause rough idle or running issues. Now, when I first took this out and measured my points, I was getting values around the 160, 170 mark, and that is pretty much what I believe to be the issue with my running problems. So yeah, now let's, I think, take the trigger points out, and we can try and address that issue by just reducing the distance with those metal points, and then we'll put it back in and remeasure it again and see if we're any closer. Okay, so I haven't got the clips on anymore, so it's easy just to slide this upwards and out. And what we're going to do is, just by applying a little bit of pressure to this top here, I tend to lean against this post and just kind of bring that inwards slightly to try and get that a little bit closer. It doesn't need to be a lot, just being careful, trying not to touch these points. It doesn't need a lot. We'll try that now. Okay, so we've just finished adjusting this point here, and what we actually found is that because this is a new block, we'd installed this screw and not cut the end off it, which was then coming into contact with this spring here, so it was actually shorting the system. So I'm going to give it another go now. Let's see what angle we're at, and then we will, of course, adjust accordingly. Okay. So I'm just going to put our points our meter in. I'm going to start slowly turning. Okay, so there we're going from infinity to 0. So let's mark that. think the connection's not great. There we go. It's about there, so just turn it to that. I'm going to slowly turn. Then there is our. So actually that is pretty much bang on. It's about 25 or 125 degrees. Obviously we've got 20 and it finishes around here. So that's pretty much as good as we're going to get using this method. I obviously just want to preface this as not a perfect way of doing it by any means. There are a lot more accurate, more detailed way to do that, and I'll definitely include some of the links to what I found online using feeler gauges as a special tool that you can get to help set the distance between the trigger points correctly. But this will certainly help, and I can kind of just say from my experience that it has worked for me. So what I did after I've set this one, I went around each of the other trigger points and set them, and it was a case of going back and forward a lot and adjusting and putting back in and rechecking, but eventually I got there. So I started with values of around 160, 170, but managed to get all of them down to around anywhere between 120 and 130. And once I put that back in the car, it seemed to run really well. Okay, so we've got the distributor and the trigger points back in the car now. We've adjusted the dwell times on everything. We know that we're in the ranges of the 120 to 130 degree angle. And we're going to try start it up now and see how it's running. Obviously the air filter and the temp sensors are out, so it's not going to be perfect, but let's give it a go. Cool, so I think it sounds great. I'm going to take it for a quick run now, but generally it seems a lot better. It's idling a lot better. Yeah, I guess proof will be in the pudding, but I hope this video has helped some of you. I'll link all of the stuff that I've mentioned in the video in the description, and please feel free to reach out if there's anything that I can help with. Like I said, not a perfect way. Probably some of you will question how I approached it, but look, it's worked for me, and definitely got the car back to some sort of functional drivability again. So yeah, thanks again for watching.